Veikko Ikonen. I come from Technical Research Center of Finland. Why I'm here as a moderator, I am a partner in the GREAT project. And in the GREAT project, we are really, as a VTT, as an institute, trying to and making the RRI happen in our work. So we have already also succeeded to bring RRI to some other of the EU projects and onto the national projects. So the practical view we have there. Welcome to the session. We will start very soon. I think that this is one of the very interesting and one of the main sessions in this conference, so I'm very happy that you are sharing this event. There will be 3 presentations. I think that we will have a very nice composition of different kind of views to the RRI, to kind of reducing or closing the gap between science and society. We will start with my partners in GREAT project, so Sophie Bell and Baron Reber. Go ahead, and I'm really glad that we have Sophie here, because then we don't have only male panel here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It appears that the only reason why I'm here is because I'm a woman, so I'm really honored about that. And yeah, is it fine? Yeah.
I will say just a few more words about the procedure. So presentations will go, you cannot interrupt the presentations, but after the presentations, if we have time for 1 or 2 good questions, we will allow them. We will try to make this the last part of the session as interactive as possible. So yes, you can also have possibility to make your comments, feedback notes in the end of the session. Okay, Sophie, please go ahead.
Thank you. So, no RRI without moral innovation. What would that mean, this idea of moral innovation? Of course, we've heard Robert this morning, who was talking that innovation is not only technological. And in a way, it leads to different types of changes. Innovation can be incremental, can be disruptive, can concern products, processes, or new fields of science and research. But whatever we take this broad concept of innovation, something is changed, and it also impacts our social practices, the way in which we relate within each other, and also the way into which we relate to the world. And this, in a way, shakes our moral intuitions, meaning the way in which we assess also technology and science. And then we are left with this question: what type of moral system to adopt to assess technology, and in a specific context, in a pluralist context in which there is no one dominant moral theory or normative system that says us without conflict what is wrong or what is bad. So this is the main context, and this is why we also need moral innovation. We need that our moral systems adapt to technology and to changes, and that they adapt close from very different types of normative systems that are held by social actors. And here, the basic assumption of GREAT was that this type of moral innovation is connected to or can be organized very closely with the idea of responsibility. And here we will develop 2 types of aspects. The first one is connected with moral theory, and the second one with politics and political theory. When it comes to moral responsibility, before I will enter a little bit in the different meanings, understandings, interpretation of the word of responsibility, I would like to spend a few minutes on how the RRI literature has conceived the idea of RRI. And here I cannot enter in all the details, and I will just mention a few points. First, it's a growing literature, the literature on responsible research and innovation, and this is only an example of different approaches, but there are other approaches that are now emerging. And these two approaches, so the first one is the 6 pillars of the European Commission, many of you might be familiar with. The last one is the National Science Foundation idea of broader impacts, which doesn't contain the words responsible research innovation, but which connects very closely to the idea of RRI. And the one in the middle is, has been proposed, and here this is one of the output of GREAT, that we summarize different types of articles and books have been proposed by several authors. One of them is René Funschenberg here. Others are Richard Owen, Jack Stilgoe, Phil McNaughton, and also Armin Grunwald that is in this session. And if I only have a few things to say about that, is that some of these approaches focus on certain outcomes that should be achieved, for example, gender equality, or if you take the first item of NSF, full participation means full participation of women, of people with disabilities or minorities. And in the NSF framework, you can also see economic competitiveness. So that would be certain outcomes that research and innovation process should achieve. And then you also have some conditions that research and innovation processes should satisfy. And here you can see the middle approach. So for example, transparency, so that knowledge can circulate. This is an echo to science, to open access. And one common thing of all the three approaches is that they all count on whether it is called participation, collective approach, stakeholders engagement, or deliberation. And Bernard will say more on that in a minute. But what is striking on these conceptions is that the very concept of responsibility has not been tackled at all. And this was our starting point in the GREAT project. And we looked at moral philosophy, trying to see what kinds of meanings the word responsibility has been given. And we ended up with 10 different meanings. And we made a distinction between positive meanings and negative meanings. Robert Jenny was referring to that this morning. And the three first meanings are, or the first set of meanings, we'll label them as negative. And they include liability, blameworthiness, and also one interpretation, a specific interpretation of accountability. Here, I will not have time to develop, but there are two, according to, or following to Mark Bovens, we can make a distinction between passive form of accountability and more active and positive form. And of course, those three meanings are very important. They are bedrocks of the social order. They will ensure that certain types of behavior, inappropriate behavior, are not undertaken, but they are not enough. First, because they are forward-looking, so responsibility is only assessed ex post. And second, because they rest upon a vision of the individual that only acts because he or she fears the threat of criminal sanction or financial sanction. And here, more positive meanings of responsibility can lead us a little bit further in introducing both backward-looking and forward-looking perspective. So you want to achieve that certain, or you want to ensure that certain outcomes will happen or will not happen in the future. And second, they also draw on a picture of the individual that really can unfold their moral capacities, and that if they are willing to act responsibly, that they are given the space to act responsibly. And so that will be the more positive meanings. And here, the question was, here the question was, okay, we have these 10, we have these 10 different meanings, and what do we do? Should we just pick one of them in a specific context? Should we try to combine all of them? Should we try to establish a hierarchy between all of them? So, and are there contexts in which some of them are more relevant than others? okay, we had all these questions. And here I will only present, of course, some examples, and it's not a full picture of all the combinations that these meanings could open. It's only to start something that you could also further in your own context of use. But first, and this has been mentioned this morning, so I will be quick on that, but there are already existing responsibilities without even taking all these meanings. So all the procedures that, for example, researchers has to follow when dealing with animal testing or with chemicals, toxic chemicals, corporate social responsibility, so it's a specific commitment of firms. But then, if we go into the meanings of responsibility, what do we have? And here I'm picking up only 3 examples. The first one is, for example, task or authority. What does could mean for RRI? If you take a research project and you want to endorse or undertake some sort of normative reflection about the impacts, the social impacts and the ethical impacts of technology, then you will eventually collect a social and human science team, and you will assess them a specific task to think about the benefits and the possible harms of technology, but maybe more deeply try to investigate the various visions of the world that the technology is making or is bringing about or out, and also the different scenarios that could be connected with this technology. So here, responsibility will mean, okay, we as a team or we as individuals, experts, we are given the task of taking or dealing with the ethical side. A second aspect of responsibility is responsiveness. And here it's something completely different. Responsiveness could mean to respond to, and this has various dimensions. One of them is, for example, to respond to the needs of citizens and social actors. So here we can think of social innovation, for example. You will try to bring an innovation that meets a need for more ethical inventions, for example. This can also be much more basic in just investigating some specific drug that will cure some disease like AIDS, for example, so everybody will, or a lot of people will agree on that. So this is one side of responsiveness. Another one could be that you also react to the criticism that is made to a specific technology. And sometimes, like controverted technology like GMOs, it's not that they are rejected all in all, it's just that we have to find some conditions, specific conditions under which they could be developed or not. And all these debates fall into the idea of responsiveness. If you undertake this, or if you endorse this idea of responsiveness as responsibility as responsiveness, then you have to react to this criticism and try to shape the design of technology. Okay, and here you see that it's quite a different world of practices and concrete action than the one opened by responsibility as task. My last example, and then I will leave the floor to Bernard, will be care. And with care here, it's even more larger scale perspective, because here you have to, if you take responsibility as care. This is something, for example, that has been developed by Christopher Groves together with other people. And here the idea is that you take care about the vulnerabilities of citizens, end user, stakeholders, and so that you have to anticipate some possible impacts, and also that you have to be forward-looking in ensuring that certain outcomes will happen or not. So here you interrelate different meanings of responsibility, and maybe this perspective will be very demanding, that researchers, innovators care about end user, but also about the environment and their vulnerabilities. I'm very quick on that, I know, but you still can ask me some question. I will not speak about accountability. And conclusion of that, we have these different meanings, and the idea is that even if some of them are more demanding than others, we cannot really make an a priori fixed hierarchy between all these different meanings. And it's richer if we take all these meanings and try to adapt them in specific contexts. So here you can use it as a toolbox, and if you think about, okay, we want to do a responsible project, what type of meaning are we taking and how do we combine them? They are not mutually exclusive. And finally, this is a pluralist framework in which you can catch up this thing that you have different moral theories and different normative systems that are combined together. Thank you. And then I will be
So,
Thank you, Sophie. Bernard?
yeah, I give 3 minutes for the gender cause because we have to share 10 and 10 minutes and it's already 13, so I will be quick a bit. In my second part, and for gender cause, as you've seen, in this second part, we will match responsibility in ethics, and you have said it's complicated because we have diverse possibilities on a conceptual level, only for moral responsibility, with responsibility in politics. So we have to combine two ontological levels, persons and collectives, and ethics and politics. And when I speak about politics, I don't speak about the descriptive policy, what happens in the so-called real world, but normative politics, when we do politics. And as a film trailer, I will propose to match these 4 things, persons, collectives, ethics, and politics, with some of the 10 conceptions of responsibilities inside an inter-institutional deliberative system. It's only the film trailer. So if you don't see all the film, you have the film trailer. Like here, with a young French woman addressing an ethical question to an expert, banded by a procedural rules of cooperation. It was an attempt to fill the gap between science and society, more politics, perhaps politics and society. But I will return on this example. It's les états généraux de la bioéthique afterwards. If we return here to the first pillar in the RI, participation, citizen engagement, this is the new thing we have regarding the actual researcher responsibilities coming from epistemology, science practices, or ethical appraisal in compliance with European Commission. Yes, participation, nice word. But with which purpose and how? It's a too wide concept. As Pierre-Frédéric Baron de Coubertin, the French educationalist and historian, founder of the modern Olympic Games, said, winning medals wasn't the point of the Olympics, it is the participating that counts. Yes, with participatory requirements, we haven't reached the Coubertin level. Indeed, when we play games, in the Olympic Games, we have robust rules, even if we have never read Wittgenstein and his metaphor on language games. Sprachspiel. We can do philosophy here. I've heard it's not forbidden. So with participatory requirements, with this first pillar, we speak sometimes about citizen and sometimes about stakeholders. By the way, it's not the same. Okay. But participation in assessment of science and mainly emerging technology has not begun with RI, as you know, and most of you in the room know. We have more than 30 years of practices and a shorter tradition of research, mainly in the field of science and society, mainly sociologically oriented. It is true that the arrival of a strong normative concept, responsibility, reconfigures the field after a period of perplexity for these researchers, because most of them were sociologists. They were accustomed to depict the word, but not responsibility. What does it mean? What can we do? It's a really strong normative concept. So, PTA has produced more than 50 different participatory devices, but after that, people have thought, okay, we participate, but why? And I propose here, I have no time to go into detail, 11 different goals for participation. Is it for mediation, or is it for an alternative to opinion poll, to understand very well, very carefully what citizens want? Okay, the goals. It's not to advertise my thing, but I have published that, so you can imagine the big amount of research we have already in participation and participatory technological assessment. And we have a lot of experience, and there you can see one of 10 perhaps of these 50 different devices of participation. And okay, we have the devices, we have the rules, we have the criteria of evaluation. What are the good debates and what are the bad debates, and how is it possible to improve? When you do that, you can do that with normative background theories. It could be discourse ethic, instrumentalized, if you know the work of Lars Klüver. It's not Habermas. Habermas will never see, okay, it's my son, but okay, it comes from that. Procedural justice, or the dialogic democracy. It's one theory from Calon-Lascombart, you know that perhaps. It's unknown in political theory, but it's interesting. And through there, you can work, or you can be syncretistic, like Rove and Fuhrer. They have no theories, and they have proposed this selection of criterions. And these criteria can be helpful to assess participation. But we have to go a step further. Very often in the literature, we have seen that people confuse participation and deliberation. And in the 4 dimensions of RRI, presentation from Owen et al., there is a plea for deliberation. There is a plea for democracy. But when you see into detail, it's only dialogue, engagement, and debate. Debate for what and how? And I want there to let know, for people who are not accustomed with that, that like with participation, 30 years of research, we have 30 years of research in the theory of deliberative democracy. There you have some books, and you have empirical works. You have people who have done indexed, very robust indexed, to assess the level of deliberation in the parliament. It's very funny to see how high the level is. And there you have some criterions to see what can be deliberation. You should use arguments, you should be truthful, you should make logical justification between what you say and how you defend it. You should follow the strength of the better argument, and okay, you have the equal level, the openness. Okay, so as you know, we can have different backgrounds to do this. Dialogical democracy, participative democracy, and most of the work in RRI field, for example, the Consider project, has this background, this participative democracy only. They speak about deliberation, but there is nothing structured in terms of deliberation. Deliberative democracy, and I propose that through the RI work, we integrate the theory of deliberative democracy, but it's a kind of exchange. We pick that, and we propose to this community to be more responsible. So, to conclude, the first problem we will have to do for the future will be responsibility versus responsibilities. We have to make a kind of trade-off about who is responsible of what. For example, if you see the first European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity, in this very important text, as you see, you have a lot of academies behind. In this document, they make the distinction between 2 categories of issues: problems related to science and society, facing the socio-ethical, what they call the socio-ethical context of research, and problems related to scientific integrity. And for them, for the researcher, we have to stop to scientific integrity. It's not the jobs of the researcher to answer to the first kind of questions. We have to have a position on this coming from the RRI. It's possible, perhaps, to go beyond the ethical reviews, the actual ethical reviews. But it's true that in RRI, we have not to forget the link with strong ethical positions, as we've seen in the previous round table. And there is a new series I'm in charge of, where philosophers try to approach the question of ethics in RRI in a responsible way. So we will have to match the individual responsibilities, for example, virtues, and collective responsibilities, for example, accountabilities. Yeah, I don't forget to stop, because for the 3 minutes. We have to match the ethical, part one of the expose, and the political one, with both deliberation, the individual, the ethical deliberation, with the collective political deliberation. And this is the last step. In the field of deliberative democracy, the recent step forward was to exit from mini publics to enter into inter-institutional deliberation. We have institutions in our world, as you know well, and each institution has specific responsibilities to follow. It's not the job of every researcher or every consortium to be responsible for everything, because it will be a kind of demagogy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Sciences, Paul. Does anyone have immediate reaction? No? Okay. Save your questions in the latter part of the session. So next we move to René van Sandberg from Commission. You all should know him. He's the father of the concept, so please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I see we already consumed half an hour, and so the biggest challenge for philosophers are always to remain within the time frame. It's easier than giving solutions to RRI, so I'll do my best. Let me start with a definition I gave for RRI, which was actually in the work program. I think it was 2011, and which was the basis for the 4 projects which are featuring this conference today. And I'll do this for 2 reasons. One reason is to focus in on what the invitees asked me to do, to give some elements of the notion of responsibility in here. And secondly, because I want to complain about the possible danger that we would reduce responsible research and innovation as an issue of a couple of keys. Because I'm only a very conditional and also reluctant supporter of these key pillars, which are sometimes presented in different ways. Only, if these key pillars really are in itself transformative in nature and are interconnected in a way which will lead us to our major goal. There's another reason I want to highlight this definition, because what I think is the real challenge here, and which is notably taken up by the project progress in a global dimension, is the dimension of social desirability, and that's of course new in terms of innovation policy, because and that's the paradox in European Union policies, is that we have in a lot of policies very strong normative assumptions, even anchored in the Union, notions about human dignity, solidarity, which would help us to support policies, for instance, in the context of asylum policy. And you see there that we are actually not capable of doing these things. It's controversial continuously. We can't agree on anything. Where the issue on research and innovation policy is exactly the opposite. We always agreed on having research and innovation funded. It was never an issue of high debate. We got even a larger amount of money, incredibly amount of money for research and innovation, with a decreasing budget. And we have very weak, agreeable normative assumptions there, actually none. The only one is that we justify research and innovation policy in terms of macroeconomic grounds, criteria. And this is why we have conferences elsewhere in Brussels on research and innovation policy, where it's all about economy and jobs. And this is why we have conference here where we talk about responsibility issues, and we don't actually know how we implement this in the world. So this is the real challenge there. And the problem, of course, is that we have delegated in a very clever way institutionally the normative issue, what is good, to the market. Because innovation is, at these other conferences where we are not now, inherently good and also steerless. And we stay for the challenge to make it manageable and driving it not just to macroeconomic objectives, but also to social objectives. And there, the 6 keys are all very nice and well, but not sufficient. So this is what I want to highlight. And since I have to take within the time frame, I want just to highlight 2 things which needs to be really transformative here. That's the dimension of ethics. We have seen the dimension of ethics too much in terms of an ethics of constraint, in terms of this is what you can or cannot do, and not as an ethics of what I would say normative design of technologies, normative design of complex technological systems. And I know that some of you have actually been working on that, notably in the field of ICT. Projects of Van Staal, for instance, have addressed this issue. So I'm of course happy to hear that within these projects some advances has been made on that front to transform at least one of those pillars to something which are helpful for RRI. Another challenge is the dimension of public engagement. It was slightly touched upon, or slightly explicitly touched upon by my previous speakers. It's about public engagement, it's about what and how. And just engagement for the sake of engagement is not sufficient here. We have run that with a lot of engagement exercises over the last decades, and it's much more on creating social commitments. And there is, again, a dimension which is highlighted in my definition. It's not about technological potentials and their ethical and social problems. It's about defining what we actually want as social outcomes of innovations, and not particular technologies. And this is a different thing. It's a shift from looking to technological potentials of particular technologies towards innovations in view of particular social outcomes. And we have to have, when it's about deliberation and democracy, then our first challenge is to define what we think of being social desirable innovations, rather than running behind technological potentials for which we raise ethical issues. So this is the paradigm shift which we really have to make. So I will quickly go through this. Oh, sorry. So the shift is actually what we have here on the left side, and there's a lot of work has been done, let's say, in pre-RRI projects, you know. So this is about identification of ethical issues, incorporation of safety issues, budgets for identification of risks, identification of knowledge gaps, regulatory needs, involvement of stakeholders. This we all did. We did this in bio, we did this in nano, and it's all good and well, but not sufficient. So what we need to do? And what is typical there was, it was a key tech focus. I can't tell you how many projects we had only on bio, only on nano. It's just, it was getting boring, really. So, what do we need? This is this. Sorry? Okay, so I mean, here again we have some actually in this project, and I'm again my congratulations with that, have tried to address these elements of anticipatory governance. I mean, actually both in Europe and outside. Deliberative governance was reached upon. An ethics of co-responsibility, which means actually here that, as I highlighted, we have to make the step from stakeholder participation to stakeholder commitment. And that, of course, requires that stakeholders are, first of all, able to participate in these issues. Because then I come back on this image of these various conferences here in Brussels, where we don't talk to each other, is that, of course, at the economic conferences, if you come there with our RRI view, there is no place for you. There is no entry point. Even if you want to become responsible, they will not allow you to be. So this is the point of the new governance. This is the task of the Commission and other governmental bodies to allocate tasks to actors, to responsible actors, but also allow them to become responsible. And this can trigger off, and that I can relate back to what Robert said this morning, the relational element. We have to become mutual responsive. Mutual responsive, which can be a constituting force for innovation and driving it to those societal desirable ends which we need. So just to give an example, because philosophers tend to become too abstract. And we have projects on healthy aging, for example, in Europe, which have from the outset a social outcome as a desirable endpoint. We have there defined healthy aging in terms of that by 2020 we want to increase our life expectancy and life quality with 2 years. And we don't look to particular technologies. No, we look to actors who are relevant to bring this about. This includes also social innovations. This includes also change of behavior of individuals. It has not a particular technology focus, but is of course also relevant for technologies. It sets research agendas. It sets agendas which are flexible in nature. So indeed, as sustainability, RRI is a moving target. It, once you have defined it, it moves away from you, and you have to redefine it. So it has a social objective. Now, this is, I actually want to show this to you because I'm always tortured in the bureaucracy by the fact that yeah, I talk about RRI, but is then there also something like irresponsible innovation? And I say, of course there is. And where is it? Then, of course, the question is, can you identify irresponsible innovation in a particular product, in a particular outcome, yes or no? And the problem here is, of course, that indeed it is predominantly process-related. When it comes to GMOs, is GMO inherently irresponsible? No, it's about the way that it was brought on the market. It was a technology push thing. The opposite we have seen with biometrics. It was a policy pull thing. Policymakers wanted to implement any security technology available, regardless if it was actually working or not, or whether it would contribute to a higher level of security, let alone that they would define what security was. Neglectance of basic principles. in technology. We have seen that in the electronic patient dossier, where there was a huge neglectance on issues of who owns the data, doctors, patients, who have access to it, etc. It was addressed too late. Billions of euros have been burned. The other dimension of irresponsibility lies in lack of foresight and precaution. That's a traditional thing, I would say. Unfortunately, it's still out there. We still expect 300 to 400,000 people to die from asbestos. We banned it 100 years after it was identified as potential dangerous. Now, as I said, it is important to keep in mind that the futures of responsible research and innovation have thus an outcome aspect, you know, what type of products you actually want out of innovation, and how do we govern it, and how do we guide this process. And of course these are interrelated. I think one of the, and you can easily, if you look to this table, you can easily see some of the pillars or elements of the navigator. I just looked to in it. You can see that in this table, but it's important actually to see that RRI will only come about. And let's be honest, RRI is, we don't have real examples of RRI yet. It still has to be done. We have very few things out there. So we don't have this, what is here on the screen. We want this. And we only can get there if we take all these dimensions into account, and when we have all these pillars actually transformed to something else, what we need, how we understood them previously. This is true for science communication, where we always thought it was about educating the people and enlighten them about particular subjects, where science communication should be on that everybody involved in the RRI process, in the innovation process, is in itself in a certain way a science communicator, and you have to manage this process. Ethics is, as I said, not an ethics of constraint. It has to deal with the normative design of technologies. It's not about just governance as a process as such, but we have to see that the governments and the roles and responsibilities. Let me see, I thought I had another slide on this. No, it's not there. Well, so I would say, you know, responsibility lies thus in these dimensions, both in the process, in the outcome, and in the procedures. You have to see who is responsible for what. That's the more particular element of the process side, of course. And the outcome side can then be defined while we are working. And to end my story with is an old, what I call an RRI matrix, on how we could implement, how we can make RRI actually work. And these has 20 dimensions, 20 boxes. And above, they correspond to both the process and product side of, so the outcomes, what you want out of responsible research and innovation, and how it is governed, and how the process side is organized. And these dimensions, so institutionalization of technology assessment, application of the precautionary principle, a normative design of technology, innovation governance, and public engagement, they have both this product and process side, and they meet. And either in a way where the process side is, has the priority, or the product side has the priority. So on the product side, you can actually ask, you know, how is safe is enough? And on the process side is, of course, what would be an acceptable safety standard. Now, this is also true for the normative design of technology. So it's about which principles to choose on the product side, and the process side is, of course, how you organize these technologies to come about. So I've seen that in the course of the three of the 4 projects, people have actually worked on one of these items, but for me, RRI is only there when we have done all 20. So I hope this we can do in the future together with you. So thanks very much for your attention, and I think I managed it in my time frame.
Yeah, you were perfect.
So that's.
Thank you.
By the way, yes.
Thank you, René.
Do leave comments on my website so I can come back to you. It's a good way of communication.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, René. Let's move now to the next presentation by Professor Armin Grunwald, head of ITAS. So let's leave those questions till the end of the session. I think that we can squeeze a little bit about the lunch if we have a lively discussion here. Okay? Floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. It is excellent to be here to meet so many colleagues from RRI, TA and related fields. 2 pre-remarks. The first one, René mentioned that philosophers often have difficulties to keep time. My experience is that it is worse with engineers. The second point, René had on his first slide a notion from technology assessment 2. And in a sense, it is the notion that RRI is the modern type of thinking and technology assessment might be old-fashioned. In my impression, such statements do not make really sense because TA is an undefined issue and RRI also is. In spite, we have some definitions, there are no sharp borderlines, and you have the choice. If you say TA is part of RRI, RRI is part of TA, or it's more or less the same. And if you have made a decision on this, you only have to adapt your storyline in order to tell it plausibly. So there are many possibilities to relate TA and RRI. It might be ridiculous in a sense, unless, and that is the reason for me now to come to a much more specific realization of technology assessment, which might also be regarded a realization, a model of RRI, the Parliamentary Technology Assessment. It is a very specific part of the overall science and policy interface, but there might be some lessons learned for RRI. In advance, I would like to remind some of the criticisms against the notion of responsibility. You all are familiar with them, and I'm very happy about these 4 RRI projects because they developed a lot of recommendations, of clarifications, so that we now much better understand what the concept of responsibility, governance, and so on, what all this includes. I would only like to make 2 points on this. The first one is this issue of the subject of responsibility. What are we talking about if we talk about is this or that responsible? Usually we talk about future developments, impacts of innovation, of technologies, and so on. There are concerns that this type of subject does not exist because we do not know enough to really talk specifically about responsibility. Take, for example, synthetic biology, perspective for 2030, 2040. What can be said about responsibility today regarding the fact that we have so little knowledge about future developments? The other issue is the thinning of responsibility in our modern societies, which so much division of labor with so many actors involved in technology governance. So we are in risk to talk a lot about responsibility, but at the very end, it will be thinned in so small pieces that nothing could remain. So the task is a clarification what we mean by responsibility and related issues beyond the only well-feeling in the rhetorical sense. My proposal is a very simple model of responsibility to take 3 dimensions, the empirical dimension, the ethical, and the epistemological one. The ethical, I guess it's clear. It's the question where we take criteria from in order to assess something as responsible or not. And behind that, all the ethical theories would have to work and to provide us with criteria. The epistemological dimension concerns the question, what do we really know about the future impacts, consequences, developments, and so on? What quality does our knowledge have? How do we deal with uncertainty? All these issues, for example, related with the precautionary principle. My point now is to look to the empirical dimension. It is on the question, who should take what responsibility? Who are the actors who take responsibility, who should take responsibility, but also who are the actors who assign responsibility. Responsibility, in my mind, is a social construct. It is a result of an assignment process. And what we all are talking about is about good processes, good criteria of assigning responsibility. And this is, in part, an empirical question. We have to look at the constellation of actors in a specific field and then to think about how should the responsibility be arranged among actors in order to not to guarantee, but to allow a good governance in that field. And now I will come to the parliamentary issue. Parliamentary technology, it is a very specific realization, a very specific constellation where such responsibilities are divided among actors. It is now 50 years ago that the notion of technology assessment was invented in the United States Congress. And in the meantime, a lot of institutions in the parliamentary field have been founded. Today, it is Europe which has the highest density of parliamentary TA organizations. We are organized in the EPTA network, European Parliamentary Technology Assessment Network, and there are a lot of institutional solutions how to do technology assessment in a parliamentary context. I was very happy to meet Melanie from Rathenau Institute today in the morning. There's a very specific model going on with a high involvement of participation, a high involvement of the public. And I will soon present the German model simply because I know best of this model. I'm the director of the German Office of Technology Assessment. But there are also many other institutional settings with different distributions of responsibilities and with different involvement of actors. So this is only one example. This office, I will not go through the slide in detail. Please have a look on it. It is more on data and facts and data, and it just should tell you that there is a real office working, that there are real actors working with real projects. So it's not a virtual institution, but it is working. And it now has been working for 25 years. And the mode of operation, and this says something about the distribution of responsibilities and accountabilities. There is a specific committee, the Bundestags Committee on Education, Research and Technology Assessment, which is responsible for our work. There's a group of rapporteurs, one member of parliament from each of the political parties. They have as a rule the principle of consensus. This is the only place in the regime of the German Bundestag where consensus is obligatory, and this has to do with the fact that in the German system, the government always has the majority in the parliament. So if the parliament should be strengthened by technology assessment, the government, the opposition must have the opportunity to commission studies, perhaps also against the will of the majority. So this is the reason to have the consensus principle here. It is a very, very interesting issue in particular from the perspective of responsibility, because in this way the fractions, the members of parliament, are forced to think about a balanced view on, for example, the agenda of our office. This agenda is determined by the Bundestag, but the projects are conducted by our staff members in scientific independence, so the members of parliament are not allowed to take influence on the results of our studies. And this is a very specific, again, a very specific division of, let me say, responsibility labor. The political side takes the responsibility for determining the agenda, the themes, the issues, and our responsibility is to guarantee the scientific validity and reliability of our results. The political debate is separated from the formal approval that we have fulfilled our mission on a specific project. Now, in the description of our session here, it is said that we should look on situations where on responsibility as an issue by which the gap between science and society could be closed a bit. And I guess our office is an institutional setting where the gap between science and the parliament as the representative of the public is closed a bit. But this comes at a price. The price is that there is a very specific interface, so there is no complete intermixed communication, no absolute inclusive approach. There are very specific tasks dedicated to the different actors. And it is very clear in our system where the mandate of science ends and where the mandate of politics begins. This is one example, one picture only, where the EPTA meeting was organized in the premises of the Bundestag. And now some lessons learned. I will only go to a few of them. Take the second one. Some weeks ago, we had a ceremony at the Bundestag with the Bundestag's president being with us, our 25th anniversary. And the members of parliament, they did not want to have only a ceremony, they wanted to have a theme to be discussed there. And they decided to take man-machine interfaces, new developments, visions, and so on as the theme. So we had all these issues of robotics, human enhancement as to be discussed there. And to me, this was a bit astonishing because you could say, okay, the members of parliament, they shall care about Deutsche Energiewende, or they shall care about refugees and the Ukraine conflict and whatever. Why are they interested in man-machine interface? This was interesting and tells us a bit that the themes which are at the heart of RRI, the NEST, New and Emerging Sciences and Technologies, they find interest even at the parliamentary level. The next take the second from the bottom, the increasing openness to participatory elements over the last years. In the German system, participation is a latecomer. Germany is more or less top-down, organized, rather hierarchical, but things have changed over the last 5 to 10 years, and this also meets what RRI is talking about. More inclusiveness, more participation, more bottom-up elements in our work. And the third, the point at the bottom of the slide, a wide range of impact often occurs outside of the parliament. So our work is, looking at the mode of operation, it seems that our work is something like expert advice to members of parliament. This is indeed at the heart of our activities. But around this, there's much more. There's involvement of researchers, of stakeholders, and often after our results have been published, there is a public debate on this. So in this way, we are part of a broader debate, and I guess this also relates the work of parliamentary technology assessment to what's going on in a broader sense in RRI issues. Last slide. The first lines I will skip. The parliamentary technology assessment is part of the European governance of science and technology. In the MASIS report of 2009, it was stated that this approach, parliamentary technology assessment, is among the elements which constitute a specific European way of shaping the science policy and the science society interface. Parliamentary technology assessment is very diverse. I only presented one specific example. It is very diverse with respect to actors involved, mission, participation to the public, the use of mass media, the methods, the toolkit, and so on and so on. It is a very rich diversity in that field. And so I think it should be regarded as an important element of institutionalized RRI and as part of the RRI landscape. However, and this is my conclusion, I guess in many fields, in many respects, parliamentary technology assessment could be improved and developed further, taking up ideas from responsible research and innovation. We could do more in this direction. In particular, if I look at EPTA, we could exploit much better our rich diversity of experiences from different institutional settings, from different understandings of technology assessment, from different roles of actors involved, but also perhaps from different decision-making cultures according to the different political traditions in the member states of EPTA. So we could do more, and so I would like to conclude that it would be worthwhile to think about a further development of a parliamentary technology assessment regarding the postulates, the principles of what RRI and the projects here have provided us with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Armin. So you must be eager to make questions, interactions. Yeah, I see you looking ahead. Okay, Robert? Technical problems.
Yeah, sorry for that. So, if the moderator allows me, I will have 2 questions. One
Yes.
for each
2
speaker.
at most.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask briefly, and it's not a provocative question to Armin. Thanks for your speech, because you know how much I appreciate, especially your tripartition of responsibility. You were saying, yeah, rightly, we don't know what technology assessment is, we don't know responsible research and innovation, what exactly should be or it is. And it's true, I agree with you, but I wanted to ask, and it's not provocative, it's real question from you, because you are one of the best experts on technology assessment. What would it be, according to you, then, the difference between technology assessment and responsible research and innovation? What was the need to have responsible research and innovation then? If you could answer to that. And shall I pose the second question for René, or? Okay, moderator, thank you. So,
let Armin first answer this one.
okay, thank you.
Press the
This one, perhaps, yes. Yeah. I found it. Yeah, thanks for this question. I could now elaborate for 1 hour if you want. at my institute, we drive a project on this issue, on the relation between technology assessment and RRI. We just invented this project half a year ago. So all the attempts so far to make the distinction clear, I guess they failed, because RRI takes up a lot of what TA already had in mind and in practice and so on. What I see that RRI does beyond TA, there are two things. The first one is more symbolic. Technology assessment is a notion which does not sound so sexy and nice as RRI. Yeah, why not? Because in many areas, people think about technology assessment as a technology arrestment. They think that we only look for risks and that we are not interested in the benefits and so on and so on. All these prejudices, these are not not related with RRI. RRI is a wonderful notion because nobody could be against it. And that is very similar to the notion of sustainable development. And this is not a joke of my side. I guess this is really what makes it so attractive. What it brings conceptually, I guess it is more inclusive, more integrative. It includes issues from TA, from ethics, and also from the STS field and governance research. So TA does this also a bit, but I guess RRI is more broader and can bring pieces of knowledge and communities together. It was not RRI, it was RI conference. I guess it was in 2010 or so in The Hague. I made a statement that this conference, it was in the Dutch program Responsible Innovation, that this program and the conference would contribute to a community building. And now, looking around, seeing you all here, I was right. It is a community where different competencies, different disciplines come together in a broader sense than they came together under the TA label. Thanks.
Thank you, Armin. Yeah, the second question from Robert to René.
Yeah, this is a bit more complicated perhaps, and I hope I'm not going to bore anyone, but I want to take the chance to ask René because it's a question that I've been asking myself for several months, and I wanted to ask him. So you said we don't have examples of RRI. This is correct, perhaps, no? But I think this is true because we don't know what it means to be responsible, to have responsible processes and products. What does it mean? Now, I presume that you assume, like several other authors, but perhaps in a better way, a proceduralist approach in order to suggest measures that could promote values in general, ethical values, in order to embed and to promote responsible approaches, responsible products and processes. But I think with you, of course, that if we propose a too strict procedural approach, we can lose the subjective contribution in defining what responsible and irresponsible processes could be. And therefore, in your many of your articles, you propose a fake substantive references, for instance, to some treaties from at the European level. No, I think you talk as well about the Treaty of Lisbon. And here comes my question that is a bit provocative, of course, but I imagine you can answer easily to that. The fact that the Treaty of Lisbon that you use, for instance, has been highly criticized by one of your masters and one of your first professor itself, with which you share the proceduralist approach you adopt, Jürgen Habermas, has said that the Treaty of Lisbon that was meant to provide this substantive content in order to legitimize certain kind of process at the European level has been ratified not with a massive and clear contribution coming from the people, wide participation, saying at the end that a non-democratic document produced by a political elite or a limited group of technicians should then become the normative reference for assessing a process that has at its basic procedure people's participation. To put it in other words, you refer rightly to something substantive, but that substantive content you refer to as something that has been decided not in the way that the content itself suggests it should be decided. I don't know if I was clear in making my point. So I wanted to ask you, like, what are those values that we should promote in order to have responsible approaches, and how can we define responsible from irresponsible approaches? It's only a matter of privacy, it's only a matter of data management, or is there something else there? Thanks.
Yes, I found the bottom. I'm fooled by technology. Where are you, Robert? I saw you on the screen.
He's there, he's there.
Okay.
On the left.
Well, I mean, first of all, I refer to the treaty not in a way that it was for me either fully satisfactory how they came about. I only refer to the treaty with the point of view that those things we have agreed upon in those treaties are very likely to be, as far as they concern normative anchor points, they are very likely to be normative views shared by a large population in Europe. That does not mean that that the process leading to these treaties have been ideal. I would say indeed far from it. But that's not the issue here. The issue here is that I just use this as a reference point to remind notably the people in my own house that we have very strong normative anchor points upon we apparently agree for a lot of other policies. But we have in the treaty, when it comes to science and innovation policy, only the statement we want to promote science and technological advance. Point. So, and that's the problem and the departure. And this is why RRI is actually, you know, I normally always agree with Armin, but just on this diagnosis I don't agree. Because if RRI would have been so popular, my life would have been much easier. I mean, the whole problem is there that, you know, there's a complete schizophrenia about this. So, so my life is far from easy when it comes of promoting RRI within my own institution. I'm glad that you like it, but I mean, but you are not part of the problem in a certain way. You are part of the solution. So okay. So I hope this is solved now. I don't go further into this other thing, but what was the other part of the question actually? Yeah, well, what are actually the normative views we should promote? Well, I mean, this is where if you look to the treaty, I mean, I did this as an exercise because it reminded me from, I mean, you know, it was just came out of a dream. I reminded that was just on my student times, and I did in the 70s interviews with American students, and they had to read a text, and they did not know it was the American Constitution, and they all responded that this was a communist text. This was anti-democratic, and God knows what. And then I was thinking, what would actually happen if I would distribute a treaty among you, and you would tell me what it is without knowing that this was actually a treaty? I do regard your intellectual capacity, but I'm still afraid that a lot of people out of the street would also come up with very strange things, because in the treaty there's nothing said about neoliberalism or something. No, what is stated in there is that we want to have a social market economy. Social market economy, yes, it's in there. So, and this is what we agreed after 40 years. And a lot of other things are agreed on after 40 years, including also things from even from the German constitution, which we borrowed. And they can be a basis for articulation, and I do believe I mean, even if the process leading to the acceptance of those norms have not been perfect, far from it, I think they can serve us as a reference point for articulating also things in terms of social desirability in innovation and research policy. If we just would be trying to do that, then this would already be new. And so, well, I think that was the other part.
Okay, thank you. I have noticed 3 other questions, so yeah. Please present yourself and give your question.
Yeah, okay. My name is Carsten Seidel from the University of Bremen. And I have a question which is linked to the possible consequences of RRI. And when you were just saying the colleague from the University of Karlsruhe, RRI goes beyond the technology assessment. What would be, for example, an institutional consequence in stopping a certain technology which is known to be dangerous? Like we had the situation only 2 weeks ago, the Belgian government was switching on the nuclear power station of Tihange, despite knowing that it's got cracks inside. We have the issue of plastic bags and whatever. Lots of these examples. My question is, how would it go beyond? How is your research addressing that an institution would go, if you take the case of technology assessment, these committees, like also the one STOA working for the European Parliament, with very high capacity, I've been working with them, high quality work, they only, in parentheses, advise the parliamentary committee on a certain technology assessment. This is what they're doing. Then the decision is taken by the parliament, just like the Belgian government has done the decision of switching on the nuclear power station, and we still do emissions on, and Volkswagen was lying. How can we move beyond the current state and policies, given that, like Mr. Schomburg was just saying, we are in a capitalistic system. Europe 2020 says that growth is one of the issues we should be addressing. Is it not in contradiction in itself? And how could RRI go or move a step forward there? Thank you.
And this was to Armin or? Oh.
Among yourselves.
Yeah, very briefly for my part, there are concerns that technology assessment might have a bias in itself because it is part of the system. So the capability of TA to be, let me say, independent and critical is not fulfilled to the best or optimal or maximum extent because it is part of the system. So in a sense, we are part of the German science governance of the science system, and we are being part of the system implies that you cannot consider the system from outside at the same time. So that is a bias, and in also concerning RRI, I sometimes get aware of concerns about a bias because innovation is part of the notion. So innovation seemingly is seen as something which is positive in itself. There might be a bias in this way. What we try in our everyday work is to be independent in our assessment, and that means to look on chances as well as risks and tell the decision makers, the institutions about our results. But what then will happen, for example, concerning the nuclear power plant or whatever, is not in our hand. And that is for me quite okay, because otherwise it would be technocratic. So I stick to the division of labor between science and policy making in this part of the game.
Okay, thank you. I try to include 2 more questions, so let's take here from 43. Please present yourself.
Okay, thank you. My name is Melanie Peters. I'm the director of the Rathenau Institute in the Netherlands. My question refers to the language. René said that we should start with defining the outcome that we desire for society, and then is the question who's we, of course. But you said already we have already values in the treaty, in other legislation. And my question would be, for instance, also to Armin, if you talk to politicians, is the language okay? Is the language that you can use coming from RI or TA, do they take it on? Is that something that they can use in parliament? If we talk about all these ethical notions, like today we are talking in a very... How do politicians learn from your insights, and how can they use them in parliament?
Okay, thank you. René and then Armin. Please make it quite short. And then Bernard. Okay.
Well, I mean, maybe I can come back to what I actually said in my short talk. I think the response to your question is that we would need to do other, just concretely here also in our funding, other type of projects. So projects which are based not on the key technology, but based on what we now already partly do on key challenges. That's actually, that was a partial move towards RRI by integrating the grand challenges in our funding program. But nobody in our house has a clue on how to implement it. But okay, so at least we won a little battle. But that means that if you make this translation, then you say, well, we fund projects on, be it healthy aging or food security or so on, and then you involve innovation actors. This is a lack which we had in the Science and Society program. Always there was no industry involved. I mean, I don't know how many people for industry actually here also, so not too many. So that's part of the problem. I mean, but they are the most relevant actor. So we cannot talk about innovations without having them involved. So this is why this idea, what I launched, is we need a social commitment. In order to get to a social commitment, governments have another role. I mean, in I think Armin also referred to that in the allocation and creation of responsible tasks, which means a broadening of the actors, but also enabling to people to do that. And we can already do that on project basis, but this can also be intergovernmental. This can even done on an international level, and so there are fragmentary approaches there. But I think this would be the way to move forward.
To establish mutual understanding needs some time. Often members of parliament, when they come first in contact with us, they expect us being scientists and giving them numbers. So, to put it in a very simple way. But after some time, they learn that numbers are, if numbers are concerning the future, are only symbols demarcating anything, and you don't know really what it is, what is in. And so then they begin to be more open to adapt also a different type of language. They understand that often we talk about future issues in terms of meaning. Yeah? What does it mean? What is a specific novelty in a development? What is at stake for society, for policy action fields, and so on? So it is more on the meaning. And this includes even issues of hermeneutics and ethics, of course. And as soon as they have been cooperating a bit longer with us, then it works by sharing language. However, there's a specific challenge in the parliamentary system because election periods are rather short. And after having learned so much, often members of parliament leave the parliament, and then we have to start again from scratch.
Okay, Bernard.
I will combine the first provocative question of Robert with your question with separation between technological assessment and decision. Okay, you advise and they decide otherwise. It's not only the question of participatory technological assessment. We just have the big conference in Paris with climate change. And IPCCs, they have won the Nobel Prize and they pretend they do not do politics, but they do politics. And it's very good that they do politics. But the way to match politics and technologies is very, very tricky question, perhaps a dangerous acquaintances, if you got this, the title of the book of Liaison Dangereuse. Okay, it's only an image. But you've mentioned the Congress with the first TA offices. It has disappeared under Clinton period. And why it has disappeared? Because a lot of people in the US, they don't want that we do politics of science. So it's very difficult to combine that. And with the question of Robert, I think, I agree with you, Armin, in PTA, and we have presented that too in our talk, we have a lot of work in PTA, participatory technological assessment. But with responsible innovation and research, what does it change? It changes all. It changes all because you don't participate now. You are responsible. And if you open the box with the 10 different meanings, if you say, for example, in a citizen conference, I want to have people with capacities, it's totally a different casting than if you say, I want to have people who can play roles, like in ordinary citizen conference, when you say to the people, you are the citizen, and you say, no. So, and I cannot elaborate on this, but it changed all. You introduced responsibilities, and it changed all. And to finish on this, and it's a way to address you a question, why this consensus principle? And I think it's quite impossible to speak about responsibility if you have this impossible principle to avoid consensus principle. Is it because that Habermas is a German, or is it a German story?
Sorry
to interrupt. We have to eat. Really? Okay, good.
I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. So please applaud for the presenters, applaud for yourself. Thank you.